Ah, the 50s and 60s, the era of modern railroading and Art Deco designs. Also the time of the F-units, probably the most iconic diesels of the American Railroad, and easily the most recognizable units of American Railroad. But that's not what we're talking about today. Today, I wanted to look into an engine that often gets mistaken for an F unit, but paved the way for them today. Today, we'll be talking about the E-Series of EMD diesels. Welcome to the Roundhouse, and I'll be your host today for another episode of History of the Rails. The E-Series was introduced by the Electromotive Corporation with the E1 in 1931, and carried on quite successfully under General Motors as a singular diesel locomotive, which was not semi-permanently coupled up to a train set, which allowed for easier maintenance, as the whole train didn't have to be taken out of service, just the locomotive. And I would say if you have to take an entire train off the line just for something as simple as a battery replacement or headlamp malfunction, you have a slight problem with that. Anyways, you may be wondering, what does the E stand for? Well, originally, it stood for the 1800 horsepower it could produce, but the E was kept for later models as it just stuck. But let it be known that the E9s, a later produced E unit, produced about 2400 horsepower. Now, you may think that the F in F units stood for 1400 horsepower. Well, apparently not. Apparently most early F units only produced around 1350. Okay, after looking into it, I see that some of them went well above 1400 horsepower and 1300 horsepower. That's my bad. Now, let's talk about looks. These things were pretty huge, being around 70 feet long and 14 feet tall, weighing around 315,000 pounds. With A1A, A1A 6-axle trucks, it was clear that the E's meant business. The E units were also meant to be sleek, with their almost bullet-shaped car bodies, almost like the cars of that same era. With the style shells they had, it achieved just that. Though, through some of the variations like the E3s and the E7s, they changed the head end a little bit, but all moderately they looked generally the same. While also being paired up to passenger cars, it still looked like it was all one thing. Because of the design of them, they could easily... The top part of them could easily line up with the coaches they were paired with, especially if it was a sleek enough paint scheme where the lining could match up. Like some of Pennsylvania's, or... I would say Penn Central, but we don't really talk about Penn Central. Now, underneath the shell left ample room to walk around the prime mover and all other components needed to start them. The extra room made it easier to work on the E units in harsher weather, like rain and snow. As a side note, the E units were picked up by quite a few railroads. Some of the best known examples are ones being used by the Union Pacific, Burlington Northern, and even the Pennsy. Now, the Pennsylvania Railroad, for, the East Coast, is probably the most well-known paint scheme for them. But, as all good things and huge success, the E units came to an end, as the smaller, cheaper, and easier to work with F units took over, and the last of the E units being produced in 1963. But, if you want to see one, there are quite a few left in preservation, and some places even still run them. All in all, the E's were great locomotives, and a staple of early dieselization. Well, that's all the time I have. I hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment of which locomotives I should cover next, and I hope to do one of these again. Hope you enjoy. This has been a short history.